Thank you for joining us today at the 51st Power Dialogue. My name is Obunna. I'd like to welcome you briefly before I hand over to the moderator to take it over from here. We've already done 50 Power Dialogues, and this is the start of another 50, so we're excited. And I'd just like to make a brief announcement. We'd love to have a small competition with this particular dialogue, discussing governance and transparency. So we invite people who would like to intern with us to use this opportunity, write us maybe an opinion paper, a position paper on this particular subject, and just send it to us via email, info@nigeriaelectricityhub.com. I'll make this announcement again after the dialogue. So before I hand over, I'd like to say we'll have, as usual, we'll have a moderated session, after which we will invite the audience to participate. If you want to ask questions, just indicate by using the raise hand icon feature on the app, and we will admit you when the moderator allows us to. In the meanwhile, you can leave all your questions, and they'll be read as well when the time comes. So without further ado, I'll hand over to the moderator to continue discussions. Thank you very much. Have a nice time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Obunna. My name is Dolapo Koyi. I'm a partner with Detail Commercial Solicitors. I'm a firm of transaction lawyers, and we do a lot of work in the energy sector. So as Obunna said, welcome to the 51st Nigeria Electricity Hub Power Dialogue. And it's amazing that you had 51 editions that just started yesterday. And today we will be discussing a topic, the umpire, the players, and the electricity albatross. And today's dialogue will be focused around the impact of the recent government drive for cashless payments in the electricity sector, basically for residential, industrial, and commercial customers. I have an erudite panel here. Yes, one of my panelists hasn't quite arrived, but I have an erudite panel here who will be talking about the topic. Just before we go into discussions on this, I will give a little bit of background as to what we will be discussing here. So in December, to be precise, December 30th, 2019, the NERC issued, on the basis of government's drive to increase collections and transparency in the sector. It was based on a policy directive, actually, by the federal government of Nigeria. The NERC, being the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, issued a mandatory order, basically to ensure and enforce that all customers under the R3 tag who are industrial, commercial, and residential all migrate to cashless settlement platforms. And it was supposed to ensure that they do that for industrial and commercial customers by January 2020, and for residential customers by March. In August 2020, there was also a CBN policy. As most of you know, I would say that CBN is kind of probably the biggest lender to the electricity sector at the moment. Well, maybe going to rival the World Bank, who will also be providing funding to the sector. And the CBN also in August 2020 issued a circular to deposit money banks, basically giving more specific information as to, or providing for more specifics as to how banks also, which are under its purview, deal with payments coming into the electricity sector. And it's quite far-reaching as to the kinds of transactions, what a deposit money bank is allowed to do and what they cannot do, who the kinds of customers, the kinds of resellers in the sector, how they should pay and all of that. So without going into that detail, but it all shows a concerted effort by government to ensure that collections the objective is for transparency. That's what it says, and that collections are seen transparently through the sector, such that all of the stakeholders, in the sector are paid accordingly. So we'll be looking at this this topic, the issue of transparency in the sector and collections and efficiency of collections using cashless settlement platforms, and assessing one, the rationale for this, why is it different for the power sector, why is it especially important for the power sector. The second thing we'll be looking at is looking at the impact. It's been almost 1 year since that order. What impact has it had? Is it indeed increasing transparency or not? We'll also be looking at framework for real-time industry monitoring. It's been said that one of the things that the sector needs is real-time industry monitoring. Okay, how effective can that be? Are the discos ready? Are the different players ready? And talking about how the regulator can improve transparency. So to discuss this topic today, as I said, I have an erudite panel of experts. The first speaker I'd like to introduce is Engineer Lawal. He's Chief Compliance Officer for Kaduna Electricity Distribution Company. Engineer Lawal, you are welcome. The second person I'll be introducing is Jose Zaivar Guerra Roman. Jose, please forgive me if I've murdered any of your names. He's CEO Smartech. Jose has played a lot of roles in the sector. For some of you who are in the sector, don't mind that he's not Nigerian. He's very Nigerian. He understands the sector a lot. He's been in the sector and been in the trenches with the discos and in many capacities. So he will also be on the panel today. My last speaker, who's not currently on but will be joining, and I think by the time I introduce him, you understand the reason why he's not yet here. He's Mr. Ahmad Rufai Zakari. He's Special Advisor to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on infrastructure. He had to be called in for a meeting with the Vice President, but he will, as you can see, he's already joined, at least he's already logged on, but we hope that he will join us before the session ends. So without further ado, I'd like, for starting with Engineer Lawal, just to give some opening remarks, and then we'll go into the session. So Engineer Lawal first, and then Jose. Engineer Lawal and Jose, I think we will be ping-ponging until we have one more person, Mr. Ahmad Zakari, come on. Yes, so please, Engineer Lawal, your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Delapo. Glad to be on this platform. Thanks to Nextia for organizing this. It's quite interesting. I was at the very first session, so it's nice to be at the 50th session. Nice to be on the panel also. Yes, talking about the cashless policy in the power sector. It's an interesting topic to have the umpire players and the electricity Albatross, and in particular to focus on the cashless payment. The Nigerian electricity supply industry's journey over the last 10 years has been an interesting one. I don't need to belabor our listeners about how our industry has fared. We have a very, very big potential market which has been underdeveloped over 20 years prior to 2005 when activities started with the electric power sector reform. A few steps before then were the, of course, electric power policy of 2001, and then working towards the Electric Power Sector Reform Act of 2005. And a lot of things happened afterwards, culminating with the privatization of 2013 come 2014, where we have seen the biggest power sector privatization the world has seen at one go, because 11 distribution companies and six generation companies were sold at once. We haven't seen that. Of course, a lot of expectations, including what we are discussing today, where payments are expected to have changed radically in the market. I'm happy that cashless payment is one of those good stories that we can offer in the power sector. However, a lot of other expectations have been put forward, rightly so, by different consumers and power sector stakeholders. But in particular, today discussing the impact of electricity regulation by the umpire, the players, and how it has affected the industry. I think it's a very pertinent topic, and it's interesting to be on the panel to give in our perspective as a sector operator on this issue. So thank you very much for having me on this panel.
Thank you, Engineer Lawal. Thank you. Jose, your opening remarks?
Well, Dolapo, next year, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm glad to participate once more in this next year power dialogue. Yeah, I think like the topic of transparency, it is key for the sector, and whatever we do for increasing the transparency of the sector would be a really win-win situation from the end consumer, the end user perspective, but also to all the players in the value chains of the Nigerian electricity system, NESI, and I think cashless payments, it will really provide, it's a good measure to increase the transparency of the sector. It will remove some concerns on how the money is being transferred from these end users, large end users, to the system, not only to the discos, but in general to NESI. And although there was a link, and I think like we need to be careful with that, not necessarily increasing the transparency of the sector would end up in a collection efficiency. I think like collection efficiency is more related to the willingness of paying an accurate value, a fair price for a service which is delivered. And this is, we need to think like differently when we say like cashless payments will increase the collection. I do not see a real link and connection, but I'm sure we will discuss of these things, of those topics during the call. So I'm happy to participate and let's see.
Thank you, Jose. I think you raised a valid point. Is the push for cashless more convenience on the part of the customer, for the customer to be able to have access to different platforms to pay, or is it more a trust issue, you know? And the reason why people, why government wants to drive this, because they think that there's no transparency as to how payments are going through in the sector, and the different stakeholders being able to get their payment. So yes, it's part of the things that we will discuss today. Thank you for your opening remarks. We hopefully will have Mr. Ahmed Zachary join us. So I will start again with Engineer Lawal and with my first question. Now, so as I said in my introduction, this order was given in, well, end of December, but it was to be effective January and March of this year. How has this fared? And to my understanding, this was not necessarily it's not the first time that this is being enforced. At least I am aware that, you know, under the CBN facility, there's been that drive, the CBN NEMSF facility, there's been that drive to ensure that all payments, you know, go in as much as possible through bank accounts, you know, so that there's some kind of accountability. So my question to you is, has this really made any difference? You know, NERC issuing a mandatory order, you know, what difference has this made for you as an, you know, as an operator?
Okay, so thank you very much, Dolapo. The cashless policy of the federal government of December 2019 actually came on the back of an earlier directive by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission through a mandatory metering order in 2017. And this had earlier helped the electricity sector to ensure that payments already are streamlined and as much as possible are cashless. It's interesting that you also talked about the NESF, the Electric Power Sector Stabilization Fund facility, sorry. The NEMS facility has actually made it easier for the market to actually have payments online, in the sense that most distribution companies worked with their banks, the collection banks, and then their lender banks to actually ensure that all payments get fed into one central collection account. Now, that already since the year 2015, 2016, created the visibility around collections. There has been, and I need to reiterate this fact, there has been no way that collections would have got lost at any point within the banking system within that 2016 period till now, as long as a distribution company was on the NEMS facility platform. And this has been so to all the 11 distribution companies. I mean, at various stages, some came before the other, but generally all the distribution companies have accessed the NEMS facility. And as such, they have a supervisory layer by the NEMS administrator, which is the NESI Stabilization Limited, which is a company floated by CBN, NERC, and the banks to manage the facility. This facility is the 312 billion naira that was lent by the banks to pay the market shortfalls of 2013-2014 to the electric generating companies. Of that amount, I think somewhere around less than 40 billion came directly to the distribution companies. However, the repayment has made it in such a way that every single distribution company's accounts are escrowed from the 5th to the 25th of the month, which makes it impossible for you to move out monies out of those accounts until it is unfrozen on the 25th till 5th of the subsequent month. And therefore, the transparency of that account has never been in doubt. Now, interestingly, again, every electricity distribution company sends the monthly management accounts and annual audited accounts to the following institutions, which ensures transparency and accountability. The same NESI Stabilization Limited gets this audited and monthly management accounts. Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, which is the distribution license regulator and license issuer, actually gets the management accounts and the audited accounts of the distribution companies. The CAC annual filings, of course, BPE also gets the annual report. The Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria also gets these annual reports. Therefore, there hasn't been any instance where any financial records would have been lost within the industry, and certainly the banks have this full oversight into the collections of the market. However, what this collections policy has done is to make it easier for us to actually tell our customers that we would rather not take cash or, I mean, check is also an instrument, but we would actually prefer direct credit instruments and payments that are online or through your bank account into our own collection system so that it is faster and it makes it easier. Now, the full intent of the cashless policy is to have what you can term as some sort of chain link system where you can actually generate your electricity bills, send them as links, customers to upload, to make payments through that same system, where it's more like how you have the whole Bitcoin system, some automated form of payment that is interlinked between customers' account or a whole payment system to the various distribution companies' account using the exact same platform that you bill the customers. As you know, I can bill you an amount of say 5 million naira, you make a payment of say 4 million naira with an outstanding debit, or you pay 6 million naira with a credit of a million naira. So where you have chain link systems where you can actually bill a customer, he gets the chain link, make payments from his accounts to your account, and then you generate instruction on receipts, and then everybody within the value chain sees that payment transparency. So that additional layer is what we are likely to see within the next 1 year or so as we work fully to implement this cashless policy.
Thank you very much, Engineer. That was really, really concise, but you explained a lot of things. Just a clarification, because I know that anything that's on this platform will probably go to the press on the news. It's the 213 billion naira facility we are talking about, so that it's not misquoted. I know you mentioned the figure that was not exactly that. So thank you so much. I think that you've explained, the fact that, it's this drive for cashless collections is not new, and it's actually an established system, that's been worked out on over the years. But then there is still room for improvement, which is one of some of the things you are seeing that we are likely to see in the next few years. So Jose, why is this particularly important for the sector, for the electricity sector? For most of us who are banked, I use the word for those of us who are banked, at least in Nigeria, we are used to using, consumer payment platforms like maybe your Quick Teller, your mobile banking and all of that. That is for those of us who are banked. So let's say that for those who are banked, there's a high percentage of people who are accustomed to this. But why is this very important for the electricity sector? And how does that impact, the effectiveness of the, why do we need this electricity in this electricity sector? And how does that affect the impact of it, on government objectives?
Mute.
Please unmute. Thank you.
Yeah, I was saying that this is a very good question. The way I see it is that Caslet is a new platform and for collection. So it's bringing the opportunity of bringing more platform for collection. They're saying that we can pay in different shops, like in different banks, even through the mobile and different platforms. Having one more is always good, because there is one access platform which is available for the end users to pay. So that's a good thing. Also, it provides transparency, because the payments are being channeled to a platform which is already being monitored. So that money, from the end user perspective, it has to be, is not only going for the disco, which is the final beneficiary of this, but also has the monitoring and the visibility of some entities and regulatory bodies or the CBN. So yeah, it's a good practice. And that will provide warranties that the payment is entering into the value chains of NESI, which from the end consumer perspective, the door is the distribution company. So in this regard, this is good news, and it has to be really well received and evaluated. And I think yeah, that's probably what I have to say. Yeah.
Thanks, Jose. Engineer Lal, you've talked about the fact that there are certain frameworks already in place, to monitor cashless payments and all of that. Now, you've also talked about the fact that you are looking to go beyond just enabling payments, but then making it such that your billing, it's an end-to-end. I think if I would describe it that you are making it an end-to-end process, such that when you bill, the same process to which you bill, your customer is able to pay. And I guess that there's a lot of data involved in that. I think my next question would be, what is required for you to be able to put in real-time monitoring? There's reference to real-time monitoring, that they want the regulators, the stakeholders want to be able to do real-time monitoring, to know how much money is going into the sector, as Jose has said, for transparency. What on your end will be required for real-time monitoring?
So thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, what I described earlier is the vision, the intent of the policy is to see at the end of the day a full cashless and transparent payment within the industry. As I said, the implementation, on the other hand, is looking at some sort of a cryptocurrency chain link kind of payment system. Now, electricity industry is a very cumbersome and complex financial transaction, instrument-laden market. It has so many dynamics to it behind the curtains. For us that just click on the switch and get light and then probably just log on our phones and buy a token of electricity, what happens on the background is far more complex than we imagine. Because electricity, unlike a lot of other products, is actually site-specific. It is specific to a particular premises or property. It's also time-bound because you can't store it. Whatever you generate gets consumed within that period. I mean, you can't store it as a convention, but of course we have batteries and dams that you have some form of way of storage, but generally, conventionally, you don't really store electricity consumed, at least not in Nigeria. Now, what that also has in it is the payments that we currently have done within a monthly cycle. So as I mentioned, all the monitoring processes that you have earlier are actually live because your payment cycle is a month and your reportage is within a month. Now, if we go further to break it down into live recharging and payments on the go, these are the things that we want to see automated, and these are what the electricity industry is working towards. Now, as far as the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors is concerned, and that's the association of all the DISCOs, we have determined over the last 3 years that every distribution company would make as much as possible its collection process automated, which will give us the better transparency And that was 2 years even before the government came out with the position to make cashless. And as we speak, I know about 5 different distribution companies who are over 95% cashless, including the residential customers. So it's not just the industrial and the commercial customers, which the regulation of the NERC had stated. We have gone way past that. Now, all the different distribution companies have done different systems to make these collections happen. Some have third parties that they have engaged to be a layer. Some have aggregators who actually plug into different systems, including banking platforms, switch terminal payment companies, and the rest. Some are using street agents. So different form of agency has been developed over the last 3 years. And these are what the distribution companies have in place. Now, as for the regulator, it has started developing a system between itself, the Central Bank of Nigeria, and the Nigeria Interbank switch system, I think, NIPS, which we as the distribution companies have worked with over the years. They have been working towards a better visibility and a common platform, because as I said, a lot of the different distribution companies have different systems in which they manage this collection system. So it's just a way of streamlining it. If you recall what was done in the banking during the banking consolidation years, apart from the payment platform that came up, the central bank decided to bring out the account number system, the NUBAN. So that NUBAN was now used to make the payments seamless and less cumbersome. Before, it's usually the day ahead payment, which is 24 hours. But with the coming of the NUBAN, it now got automated, starting with people within your bank. And within the last 3 years, I think almost every bank can do instantaneous payment. And that's what we want to see, both in terms of actual cash getting to the distribution companies and the actual reportage getting to all the different parties, be it the regulator, the central bank, NIPS, and then the NESI SSL management company. So these are some of the tools and equipment or processes that have been developed, and some of those that are currently being developed to ensure that not just the industrial and commercial customers are able to do all this on online and real-time transactions, but in the future, even the residential customers' payment is fully captured by the regulator and other parties that we currently do have already. Thank you.
Thank you, Ejidala. I'll come back to you, but because it appears to me like a lot is in the works and a lot has been done. So I think my question, going back to Jose, is maybe we should talk a little bit about this dynamic between collections and transparency. You know, if so much has been done, we've been joined by Mr. Ahmad Zakari. You're welcome. Thank you very much for joining. So Jose, and I will come back to you for your opening remarks, Mr. Zakari. But coming back to Jose again, let's talk about this dynamic between collections, you know, cashless collections and transparency. Is there a dynamic? Because it appears that if all this had been in place, even though, okay, it's not probably all perfected, but if so much work has been done, then why is everybody not seeing money in the value chain? Why is everybody not getting paid? We should all be getting paid. Yeah. So, you know, why are we still saying that the system is still not transparent? Where are the discos putting the money? Because indeed, and Engineer Lawal, you answer for yourself too. Yeah. Where are the discos putting the money? Yeah. You know.
Oh, where is the end consumer or the end user putting the money? And that's where the whole cash flow starts. So the end users are taking a product in Nigeria which is not good. And we have to say that when you only receive a few hours of power supply per day, you're not happy with the service. And your willingness to pay for that service is not always there. Yeah, that's one thing which is specific of Nigeria. Then the second one is that for the small commercial and industries and the residential sector, we still have a very, very high percentage of people which is unmetered. So it's around 5 to 6 million end users which are paying for a service which is not good, and they do not really know how much they need to pay because they don't have a meter. So they're just saying, well, I pay you whatever you bill me, but how do we know that this transaction is fair? And then we started to create like even the confidence on the bill, which is a very, very important aspect. So on one side, you don't have a good product service, and on the other one, you are not really sure that this, what you're paying is what you really use. It can be more, it can be less. But so that is creating a feeling from the end user, which is, I'm not very happy to pay. Yeah, I'm not happy with the service. I'm not even happy with the bill that I'm receiving because it's not fair. So then the willingness to pay goes down, and the collection efficiency is not good. It's not good. We have an average of 67% of collection efficiency in the last quarters before the COVID crisis. And so that means that 36% of the money which is billed to the end users is not paid. And if we open that cake and then we look to the residential consumers, we can even find that in some areas we have a very low collection on those areas of around 40%. That means that 60% of the residential people are not paying for the electricity. And again, I say, well, the willingness to pay is everything in this business. If you're not willing to pay, you don't pay. Yeah. And for the discos, is the only way to make it, to enforce the payment, is going and disconnecting and reconnection after they pay. So, but when you have thousands of people not paying, that's a kind of a complicated thing. So on one side, what the discos are supposed to collect, all this, then they end up collecting this. And it's and what is the problem for the bad service or the unreliable service? And then we look to overall and macro pictures of the power sector. And I would start like discos are carrying or wheeling the energy that they're receiving from TCN, and TCN is wheeling that energy that are receiving from the generators. And most generators in Nigeria, around 80% of them are combined cycle. So they're burning gas to produce electricity. And then when we look at the whole value chain, sometimes we don't have gas. Sometimes these gencos are not willing or not producing all the energy that they have because they have problems of maintenance or even investment. And then if we look to TCN, sometimes we have blackouts quite often in Nigeria. And then from the disco perspective, we also have blackouts, and we have sometimes poor delivery of the service. So at the end, it ends up having all these results on the unreliable service. So that is affecting the collection efficiency. So how could we improve, on one side, the collection efficiency, and on the other one, the delivery of a reliable service? And this is like the chicken and the egg dilemma. And this is where we need to find how we break this vicious circle. Investment. Yeah, we need to build more power plants. We need to build better transmission grids. We need to build better distribution and to have better distribution companies. And that requires investment. That investment, it has to come from somewhere. But if it is coming from the private sector will invest as far as they see a profitable return on this, as it is in the regulation. And one of these queries is like, what is everything? Yes, you're right, Lawal, when you say like a customer, you cannot take the electricity from whomever. You can only take it from the disco that is supplying your area, your house. And the price is fixed by a third party, which is a regulator. And this is also related to the transparency, how this tariff is calculated, and how this tariff incorporates all these things that are required to improve the system, yes, to keep it running and to make it improve, to bring investment into the sector. And this is probably one of the things that we need to reconsider, that there is a lack of transparency on how this tariff is calculated. And in some aspects, like how much energy the system is able to deliver, and what is the scenario for that energy production. And when we look at the tariff different scenarios, we always realize that reality is worse than what is expected. So why is this happening, and so on and so on. So I think, like, related to transparency, we have to do a lot of things. From the end consumer perspective, it makes sense that the collection efficiency is far away from the 100% yet, and the whole system has to improve a lot. And that improvement, it relies on a large investment in the future.
Okay, so
thank you, Jose. Engineer Lawal, I'll come back to you, but I want for Mr. Zachary to give his opening remarks. I'm just going to direct your opening remarks a little bit into the questions, because we've gone a bit far. But so we've been talking about transparency in the sector and the effect of the directives on cashless collections and all of that. I would like you in your opening remarks first to maybe be able to give a background of government's thinking and intention for this continued drive, or more recent drive, in the last 1 year. It's already been said on this platform that these structures already existed, maybe not 100% efficient, but they existed. But there's now a drive to even make it more efficient. So maybe to talk about the intention, and then maybe to react to some of the things we've heard about, tariff. It is indeed a chicken and egg. Should tariffs be considered? Should tariffs have been considered in this drive as well? And we know that there's a move towards tariff. We know that we have service reflect tariffs, although it's been suspended. But it would help to understand government's thinking around why this continued drive and the dynamic of tariffs, and encouraging investment. I hope my question is clear.
Dolapo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can clearly.
Thank you, and apologies for joining late. We had a very late scheduled emergency meeting at State House that I had to attend. I'd say we've been doing a number of things wrong for a long time, and we say there's no better time than now. So just because we've perpetuated some poor behaviors and habits, we cannot allow ourselves to be stuck inside a very vicious cycle that prevents us from progressing. Primarily, if you have a product and it costs 10 Naira, there's no business that can survive with you charging 5 Naira for it, right? If you did that, your working capital would be expired and you would be out of business. And this is the situation we found ourselves in, focusing on the wrong things. We thought that magically by saying power should cost 31 Naira and then making all the discos charge that would solve the problem, when power costs 50, it was costing 40, then 50, 50 plus now. So we have to stop that, right? If government wants power to be low, we should work on efficiencies, right? And it's the same way that a SIM card used to be 50,000 Naira, and over time, people give it out for free. So we cannot hold the disco value chain segment down, but we can work to find efficiencies and solutions on gas pricing, on aggressive loss reduction through metering, on efficiencies through low interest financing for capital expenditures to improve the disco network. And what you'll find is that over time, the rates will come down as efficiency is driven. But there's no way we're gonna continue living in an imaginary world where we think that we'll ever have any progress charging less for a product that costs more, which is why, to an extent, it's unfortunate. Government didn't make action early, and we are at a point right now where it's just unsustainable. We cannot have 60% of the electricity subsidy going to the top 10, 20% of the population, whereas we don't have medicine and hospitals, and our schools are struggling. And even now, we need security equipment with some of our challenges. So I know we have a very vibrant urban population that's very active on the internet. People become very upset when they hear that there's more power costs, but they're part of the problem. The Nigerian that says he doesn't want to pay for a product that costs X versus modifying their consumption, is part of this problem. Government finally has the courage to take this step into SBT. And then everybody's shouting and screaming and saying that it's fake, we shouldn't do it. And we should remember, 55% of on-grid consumers are still 100% subsidized. The 31 Naira on average per kilowatt hour that band D and E were paying before SBT, they're gonna continue paying, they're continuing to pay. Only 45% of the population band C, B, A, on-grid population was impacted. And with the agreement with labor, we're now going and even taking out an additional 30% from band C in terms of what they were supposed to have paid. So the increase will be reduced by 30%, and then there's a 10% reduction in A and B. But I promise you, next week on the headlines, if we resume service-based tariff, what everyone will be saying is, oh, government has increased tariff for everybody. And it's because there's a vibrant urban population that consumes the headlines, right? But we're committed to doing the right thing. Hard decisions are not always, popular decisions, but we're going to go back to SBT with the reductions that we agreed upon with labor, and we're going to make this market work. I mean, and that would be my opening comment. Sorry, Dolapo, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Thank you very much. I think that was really interesting and good to hear on the government side. So I think that what you're promising us is that we may see a service reflective tariff next week, or in some form.
Don't quote me, but
okay, you're online anyway, and that vibrant platform, those vibrant people are going to quote you.
No, but Dolapo, let them quote me. It doesn't matter, right? The labor and government agreement was announced 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Government actually has refused to implement it to provide additional palliative for the citizens at this difficult time. So yes. You can quote me that the rate should have gone up 2 weeks ago. So that is fact.
Yeah. Understood. And it makes logical sense on trying to find efficiencies, in the system. You have to pay for the power has to be paid for, but where efficiencies can be created, I think that's the value that private sector should also bring, increasing efficiencies. So back to Engineer Lawal, I think what I wanted to ask you about was what Jose mentioned. And I think we have a similar question in the chat room. It's about metering. Metering is a part of this equation. And I think that Jose explained it very well. So on your side as an operator, what's the plan? How does this link in? What are the challenges?
Metering is nothing short of 50% of the problem around collections and about market remittances and the rest. Metering not just gives you more collection, but metering ensures that you have data that you would work with, you have data that you would be able to make informed decisions with. It's unfortunate that a lot of focus has gone into other areas. I would say with hindsight, if I were to look at the single biggest problem, rather than focusing on all the generation, I would have focused on metering. Because if you're able to close the gaps between collections, the distributor and the transmitter would go all out to ensure that they get people to build more plants. I mean, that's the logical thing. When you exhaust a market, you look for a new market. So when you are sure that you've metered consumers and you're able to bill them, collect money, the next thing is to pump in more juice, more megawatts to them. And you get people to build more plants. So now, over the last 5 years, DISCOs have been doing enumeration. So our metered numbers of customers have been going down because you find more customers. It used to be somewhere around 5 million around 2015, 2016, went to 7 million in the last 2 years. As at last year, when the map started, it was somewhere around 9 million. But I'm sure the data as at July, which we submitted to Ahmad Zakaria and Co in the government, is somewhere around 11.2 million unmetered. And these are either current or upcoming customers on the system. You're not talking about the obsolete meters that are currently in the system. And how this metering now links to payment is the cashless policy is when you meter with new technology-driven meters, smart meters, you're able to make payments from bank to meter without interference of cash, without coming through any third party that would be able to corner any money or have it lost along the way. It makes it faster. Everybody gets his or hers fair share of the market money faster, more accountable, more transparent, makes it more valuable because, time value of money. So at the end of the day, you're looking at a system where it's not just more transparent, but it has more value. The meter actually even has more value to you as a consumer. And it also makes it, we have more informed data to make decisions. It took a lot of input to come around the SBTs because you need to know the amount of energy consumed in every point of the grid. You need to know the number of consumers within there, the number of hours that you give them, the amount of outages that you have. So metering gives you all of that facility. Over the last 3 years, we've been building a back end to ensure that the meters that we're going to install in the future are smart and they will be able to communicate, and you'll be able to use online apps to see your consumption, your energy, your outages, report customer complaints. And it would now link into the system, the backend system of the banking and the cashless system, where you can be able to make direct payments onto your account. And hopefully in the next few years, 5 years, we wouldn't be talking about the STS meters anymore, because at that point, you're now talking of the actual amount of money in the meter. So you don't have to be doing a mental calculation of, oh, a unit costs 30 naira per unit or 50 naira. You're now talking about, I have 5,000 naira in my meter. The same way you look at your phone and you say, my balance is 8,000 naira. So you look at it at your meter and say, I have 50,000 naira and it's going to take me to the end of the month, or I have 40,000 naira, so probably on the 25th, I might have to top up. So we're looking at metering very holistic. And just a few hours earlier today, our CEO declared the launch of our metering drive. So by Friday, we're going to start rolling out the new metering system. I'm sure this is exciting to our customers. This is exciting to Ahmad and everybody else here, that we need these meters as soon as possible, as much as possible, as fast as we can get them to start being on the system. So metering is everything around our electricity market.
Thank you, Engineer Lawal. I'm coming back to you, Ahmad. On just in addition to what the things that you said, can you elucidate a bit more on how government is helping to, ensure that market liquidity improves? Maybe to talk about what you are also doing in the metering area, and elucidate a little bit more about efficiencies that you are looking to create to ensure that market liquidity improves.
Yes, I'd say from a liquidity standpoint, there are a number of measures being taken, and we're very serious about it. Step one is you just have to allow for more service reflective, cost reflective tariff, essentially, or even market reflective tariff. If there's an area that is getting 24 hours of supply by, the Kaduna Disco team, they should pay the right amount for power, because the alternative is diesel or no power, right? So, that is one, right? So just by virtue of moving to a graduated tariff and ensuring that discos can only increase your rate as they improve, it incentivizes discos to improve. But areas like where I live in Maitama that are receiving 24 hours of power, I want to pay the full price for energy. I don't want any subsidy from the government. And I assure you that anybody that lives on my road in Maitama doesn't need it, right? So just by virtue of implementation of SBT, we're going to see more liquidity in the system. Now, how does that liquidity get to the value chain? Government doesn't have any more money to provide for an unstructured subsidy. Our subsidy will be focused on band D and E customers, and some of the VAT relief that we're doing for band C customers mainly, right? So I think there was an arbitrary nature to what the discos used to decide to pay. And we then said minimum remittance, but even after minimum remittance, there were disagreements with regulation and then indiscipline by some discos on paying the minimum, because the minimum remittance just said, okay, you're supposed to charge 50 naira, I'm only letting you charge 30 naira, so I can't ask you to pay 100% because you only collected a portion, pay me the portion. And then discos, didn't comply. So what we've done now is through the banking sector, all the primary collection accounts of the discos are being monitored, and we will deduct the VAT and taxes for the government. We will deduct the loans from the central bank, and then we will pass down the balances to the discos for OPEX. So there's full transparency. If and Lowell knows, this week we did a pilot. If there's 5 billion in the account, we're going to take the market money and the debts, and then we give the disco the balance. Now, this was a difficult conversation, and we're all friends with the discos. We all want to, move the market forward. So look, they also said, look, you can't expect that for many years you've not allowed me to charge the right amount. I haven't invested, and all of a sudden you're locking my account, taking all your money, and then maybe workers don't get paid. So we've come up with a structure that is acceptable to both parties. They will have a facility that allows them to ramp up slowly. So they will pay the government and the market the 63% on average that is the new minimum remittance. But to help them to do that, they have an OPEX ramp up loan that allows them to ramp up slowly. So if their capability in month one is just 40%, they can borrow 23 from the bank and pay back the market. And then through a payment waterfall structure, later they pay back the bank. So it allows us to have control over the disco accounts in partnership with them for payment transparency, but it also allows us to give them financing that eases the transition so that they can invest and then come through with improvement. So there's an OPEX and a CAPEX loan that government is offering to them, and then there's a metering loan as well. So this complaint, I've heard it from the National Assembly, the discos, and everybody. Oh, this 1.7 trillion that government keeps talking about, it never went to the discos. And it's true. We were saying you don't charge, don't invest, and then we were just paying Gencos, and we wasted a lot of money in the process. So, my commitment and target to the government is that this month in September, 63% minimum remittance payment discipline will be executed. And the discos are committed to that, and the government is committed to that as well. So the Gencos for the first month will receive 63% of the money that they're owed from market proceeds, and the subsidy amount will be significantly reduced. On metering, so we talked about the tariff. We talked now about the control of the accounts plus these transition or ramp up loans, OPEX and CAPEX, and lastly, it's metering, like Lowell said. The president has said it's his word. He said it's cheating to charge somebody for power if they're not metered. And as far as he's concerned, before the end of this administration, every Nigerian on-grid consumer will have a meter. And we're working with a few discos to roll out the first set of government, financed, supported meters that the discos will roll out. I think in phase 0, we're putting out about 55 billion naira. And I think at the end of the whole program, we would have spent maybe $400 to $500 million, whatever the conversion is, to meter all Nigerians. So this estimated billing thing is going to be a thing of the past, and we're very, very confident that that will happen. But what I'm pleading with all players in the market is, if you do not support us to do service-based tariff, and you disrupt this thing now, we will never recover. We will not be able to do the metering, and there will be no power, because the government cannot subsidize the Gencos anymore. And if the discos are not able to charge and remit, we cannot pay gas, and the lights will come off. There's a very thin line between execute SBT and make the market better, or don't, and the market is completely disrupted. And we as Nigerians need to make that choice. But there's no mincing of words. There's no middle path. It's implement the SBT and phase out subsidies slowly, or darkness and anarchy and chaos. That's the option, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you very much, Ahmad. Thank you. Very interesting insights there, and I'm sure that the audience, the Q&A box is buzzing right now with a number of different range of questions. But I just want to ask Jose one last question before we go to Q&A. Now, what's the value of data? Would a sector-wide data, quality review ensure increased transparency? What's the value proposition for data here? How would data work with this?
Data in this sector is everything, and I think, like in many sectors, but it's particularly in the power sector, which is very, very technical. It's key. But also the data has to be used in the right way, because having data for not using it is not a good thing. And I would say, like, only when you have the data and you understand the data, then you can start to make good policies. And I always say, like, a very simple case, like the daily curve in Nigeria. I've been working in the power sector in Nigeria almost 4 years, and still I haven't seen any daily curve of the power sector in Nigeria, which is very easy. Like every hour, every minute, you need to know what the generators are willing, because that energy is the one that TCN and then the discos are putting into the market. So it should be something like at night, midnight, low, then it start to go up. Then we have the peak around 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock. Then we go for lunch, and then we go to the houses, and then we have another peak. Should be something like that. But that's my dream. One day we will see it. It's difficult to understand that in Nigeria we don't have that. And that is everything, because that is bringing how much money we need to put in the sector to cover the demand. We work in the sector just to cover the demand, what Nigerians need from power. So that is bringing visibility in everything else. And this is just a very simple case for everything. And that has to be real on-time information. We have to see which generation units are providing that electricity. We need to see which gas suppliers are providing the gas for these ones. And only from there, we will have a good understanding on the generation side. And then we move to the transmission side. Also, we will have to see how the energy is flowing in the transmission, where we have issues, if we have constraints, if we have substations in the north, which the demand is requiring 50 megas of power, and we only have a transformer available of 15. That means darkness for this area. And okay, we have a constraint there, but we need to know, and we need to know where, because that is a link to what we need, which is bringing a bigger transformer to that area, when that bigger transformer is going to be deployed. And then we go to the last field, which is the disco. And again, here we need to have visibility on the cost of the services of the disco, and how the operations are being driven. And if we have a blackout, why we have a blackout? Is it because of lack of power, or is it just simply because the disco is not performing well at maintenance? Or they have 2 hours, but rather than having 2 hours, they keep in 10 hours. And at the end, our food at the refrigerator goes away. And then your willingness to pay is, again, very, very low, because they damage your birthday party with all your friends, and you don't have power. Yeah, or you are studying, and then you have power, and then you need to start turning on your diesel or your petrol generator, which is costing you a lot of money, and the same is noisy, and it's pollution, and is not good. So I think, like, yeah. So this is what I think.
Thanks, Jose. So I'm going to go to questions. There are some very interesting questions. I can't take all of them, but I will pick questions that I guess that we will react to. And I will make suggestions, but if any of the panelists is happy to react and also make additional contributions, that is fine. I think a lot of these questions are disco questions. But let me start with this question. With the recent reversal in service-based tariff, would the disco required remittance be revised downward, since the remittance levels was linked to the new tariff? This would be for Mr. Ahmad Zakari. So let me take this question and I'll go to all the disco questions.
So, and there's so much fake news, you know. When the service-based tariff was suspended, all the discos rolled back their charging to the pre-service-based tariff rates, the average of 31 naira per kilowatt hour. We've now told the discos that until we tell them to, they cannot raise back the tariff. So if anybody is being charged anything higher than what they were being charged on the night of August 31st, then let them come and complain, and NERC and everyone has the appropriate communication mechanisms to receive those complaints. Or even, you can tweet to me at AR Kazore directly and I'll chase the discos. But as far as I know, no one is being charged the higher rate now. So consequently, we are not going to require the remittance levels for the discos, particularly in October, to be at the 63% average that it was supposed to be, like say in September when the service-based tariff was fully effective. But for instance, if we go back in November, then they will be required to remit more and they must charge more to do that. But charging more will be along the lines of, band A, B, C, D, and E will not have any charge increase. And then through the capping regulation for the unmetered groups, ensuring that we cap how much they can be charged under estimated billing, while we all aggressively try to meter them through this program that we're launching on Friday to distribute meters to every single Nigerian household. So I'll say it again here. The NESI, everyone in the NESI next week as we, transition back into SBT must be unequivocally saying that there is a subsidy for 55% of the population. We must do this and we must do it transparently. We can't have any ambivalence about what we need to do because we can't afford to have the reforms in the sector truncated. But, I'm very confident that before the end of the life of this administration, every Nigerian on grid will be metered.
A big amen to that.
And to reiterate that Kaduna Disco is fully aligned with this ambitious goal of the government. It has been our ambition in 2015, even while we were focusing to buy the distribution assets. It has been key. And we will do everything possible to align with this goal of the government to ensure that our customers are metered.
Thank you, Engineer Lawal. Let me go to...
The question of EJ, I think is something that I would have asked Ahmad.
As well.
Yes.
So just as well.
Yes, I would have taken the liberty to say, that I thought it was straightforward, but maybe we would have to meet S.A. Ahmad at a more formal way. Okay. But that's supposed to be a normal yes, it would be.
What's the question?
About the minimum remittance going to be reviewed, being that the SBT.
No, that's what I said now. In October, you will pay less. Once we come back to SBT, you go back to paying, the average of 63% plus or minus this NLC reduction.
Okay. Jose, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, well, I'm very happy to hear the initiative on the metering side. Also, I think like going forward, the cost reflected tariff is something remarkable. And my only concern is how DISCOs will implement that. Again, here is the confidence of the end user. Like if you're an A, it's because you're receiving more than X hours per month, and the consumer is going to notice that. So DISCOs, and knowing them, they really need to provide the services for what they're charging. And this is key. So how we monitor that, again, the transparency. If you're a customer that is going to be A and you're supposed to receive 20 hours of power supply per day, and you don't have that feeling of receiving that energy, then we will have another wahala downward.
Yeah.
So it's key that the DISCOs follow this process of investment, that in this way, this improvement which the government of Nigeria is providing. Also concerning to the meter, will be very, the meter, it is a part of the equation. We know that the meter and the DISCOs, they know that they also need to really take care of how the connection between the meter and the distribution network is done. We have a big share of bypassing. Not by installing mirrors, we will reduce the energy. We will increase the collection efficiency, probably if it is prepaid, but you will increase the energy theft. This is something that when a DISCO is installing a mirror, if we're just considering to install the mirror, it's going to be a market failure. You really need to take care of the protection of the meter to the distribution grid. And the way you do it, it's through investment. Unfortunately, you will have to change the conductors and secure the connection point to the electricity distribution. So this is very good news, but don't be naive, because it will require that the DISCOs follow this investment with additional investment. Otherwise, just having the mirror is a bypassing in particular low-income areas, like where people, they have a challenge to pay the electricity. So this will end up in bypassing. So please be careful with that, because you will have to follow the investment that the government is doing.
Yeah, thank you, Jose. I'm going to some DISCO specific, and I think, Ahmad, you've indicated that you also you would like to answer this question, but I will put it to Engineer Lawal first. If I prepay for electricity through the prepaid meter platform, at what point does the money become payment to be shared in the sector? I'm going to also ask you another related question. There's another question here that says, for all those, I think this is a comment. It says, for all those prepaid meters installed, are expected to be captured in an appropriate area code. This will help measure the performance of marketers with the bill response. I think this is kind of like advice. So do you want to answer that question?
Yeah,
how does that become money?
Well, I think we explained it, right? Essentially, before, the money would go into the primary collection account of the DISCO.
Yes.
DISCO would decide how to repay. So then, the DISCO pays whatever percentage to MBET and TCN, then the rest of the value chain will get it. But in today's world, it goes to the primary collection account and it's then shared equitably. So there's a new payment discipline in the go-forward market that was not in existence before.
Okay.
Just to add, at what point does it get shared? The normal circle in the financial side of things for the electricity industry is at a 60-day period. So you consume electricity. Let me use, for example, you consume between 1st of June till the last day of June. You get billed on the 1st of July. Probably the bill gets delivered to you within that July 10th, 15th, I don't know. And you're expected to make a payment at the end of the month. By 1st of August, that money is supposed to have been sent to the various market participants. Two major payments goes out of the distribution company. Sorry, I would rather say three. Taxes get to the government. The market participants get paid through the market operator. Market participants include the transmission company, which basically covers the transmission service provider, and the system operator, market operator. So all the thousands of staff of the TSP under the TSP, and then the market operator, system operator, which are all the staff of those injection substations or transmission substations. That's one market participant. Next is the regulator, Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company. These are all market participants paid through the market operator. The third component is the generating companies, who are paid through the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company. So the payment you make to the embed, 100% goes to the generation companies. We have about 26 to 27 on-grid generators right now as we speak, about 7,000 installed megawatt across the market. So that's how the payment cycle is. You consume in a month, you get billed the next month, and your payment goes to the market participants the month after.
Thank you. Specific questions to you. Kaduna, this is good. There are two questions. Right. The service reflective tariff does not invalidate the capping order from NERC. Sure. But Kaduna Electric has been sending outrageous bills to estimated bill customers. Engineer Lawal, kindly shed more light. And another one, what are the DISCOs doing about transformers? DISCOs rate an area as having 18 hours a day, but due to a bad transformer, they barely enjoy 4 hours a day, but they are paying for 18 hours. Is that correct? Would that be correct?
Okay. So there's no point, at no point in time would we want a customer to pay for consumption that is outside his band. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Now, we currently, across the value chain, we currently do not have smart distribution substation system where we are seated and we know that transformer is out. The best endeavor is our staff notices the outage or the consumer complaints, and all the complaint channels are available. And I know this is across most DISCOs, social media, phone calls, call center, automated call centers, and the rest. So anytime there is this, please do reach out to your local supply point. It's something that you should be able to be serviced immediately. Now, in terms of the capping, it has not been jettisoned. You know, the regulator brought out the capping order in February. It has been existing. The capping order, of course, stated variation in terms of periodic reviews, 3 months or so. And then, of course, there are the delineations between area offices or feeders. So if you have a complaint, please do send an email. We always receive complaints of customers via email also. Please send us an email. You can send me directly that email, and I'll be sure that it will be looked into. My email is lawal.lawal@kadunaelectric.com, one word. And somebody would have a look at it. Now, I want to make a point around the data that you mentioned earlier. You asked Josie earlier. And I mean, I'm a little academic when it comes to data. And as I said, around the metering, it gives you the most important data that you need to work around in terms of system planning and the rest. And one thing that is persistently missing in our power sector is lack of planning from top to bottom, bottom to top, in terms of the actual engineering side of things. It would interest you to know, if you go to, say, National Grid or Off-Gem or so, you would find maps of the distribution and the transmission networks. People do take a transformer and do a master's thesis. They do take an injection substation or transmission station and do PhD thesis on them. And it's difficult for you to find it here. I mean, as a distribution company, it's difficult to find actual simulation data of the transmission company as we speak. So lack of data is extremely difficult. And Jose is saying that from informed point, because in his previous life, we have worked together and he did a fantastic work. I think that's the, it hasn't been done, mapping out peri-urban areas and the amount of work that is needed to ensure that they have stable and sustainable supply. Kaduna Disco is very fortunate. We've put in a very great deal amount of energy and time into this. We were supported by Columbia University, the World Bank, Jose and his team, the AFD, to map out and bring out all these details and data, including those we're talking about, the collections and transparency issues. But most importantly, all those technical issues that you will be able to ensure, all these complaints about the transformer being out and you can't do anything about it. I mean, sometimes it's not about your transformer really. It's about the fact that the feeder does not even take all the transformers in your area. There are 10 transformers, the feeder can only take about 8. You need a relief feeder, not a transformer. But the politician in your area is more interested in getting a transformer because, I mean, it's the easier thing to do. But if you have 1,000 buckets, which would take 20 liters, you cannot use a 5,000 liter tank to supply the 20,000 liters across those 1,000 buckets, you know, because the water available in that 5,000 liter tank would never be enough to go through. So no matter the amount of transformers that you'll be adding, as long as the distribution feeders are weak, the transmission is weaker, and then the generation is not enough, or they are misaligned, because sometimes you have installed capacity of 7,000. Your transmission is less, your distribution is, I mean, we have a distribution of about 13,000, but it's severely misaligned, because where you have a village that is able to take 200 kV, the line goes there that only supplies probably 100. So a lot of misalignment, and this goes back to planning, this goes out to actual engineering practice and the rest. So
thank you, Engineer Law. I'm sorry, I have to actually cut you short there because I need to close down this session soon, but I have a few questions so that I don't miss some people's questions. Some questions are repeated, but thank you very much. You've really put a lot of light to this. To the person who said that his question as to the transformer was not with respect to Kaduna Electric, I think that he said with respect to Abuja Disco. The same principles apply. You need to get in touch. You need to reach the Disco and find the communication channels with the Disco.
I would say Abuja Disco is listening to him, so I'm sure they
yes, yes. So they would respond. And just for Abuja Disco that's listening, they're talking about a 33 kVA line in Kubwa, Abuja. And they think the person's thinking is that there's a lot of load on the transformer and can hardly power for 5 hours on a tariff that is 18 hours. This is this person's opinion. Okay. Yeah, the person is, let me see if there's a name. Person's anonymous. Okay. There have been a number of questions about the meters that issued by the federal government. Are they free? Mr. Ahmad Zakari, can you respond to that? Are they free?
Free lunch, even in free time.
Are they free?
They are
no,
free. They are free.
The day
let me clarify.
Or whatever you pay. I mean.
Let me clarify.
Okay.
They're free at the point of deployment, right? But obviously, so they are free. Customers will not be charged to get the meters installed. But ultimately, it is a loan that is going to the discos from the federal government at a 2-year moratorium, 8-year single interest. So it's very low rate. And we're just going to allow the discos to recover the cost through the tariff, right? Which essentially is what they do if they install a transformer or they build a line. So it's nothing complicated. But to accelerate the process, we government are providing the liquidity. We're providing it at very low rates. We're enforcing that we buy all of the meters locally, and they'll be manufactured all in Nigeria. For every consumer, you'll receive it at the point of installation for free. But obviously, over time, there'll be a repayment through the.
Okay. I think the follow-up question is that, is this left, who gets this meter? Is it left to the discretion of the disco? Is it going to be per state? Is it, people below, people on this band? Is there going to be criteria?
No, I mean, it's, the discos had, they have a rollout plan, which is approved by the government regulator. So every disco has submitted the metering gap in their locations and service franchise areas. We've reviewed them, the regulator has, and so what we're giving them is exactly the gaps that each disco identified. 6 million is the people with no meter. There's an extra 4 million that we need to, upgrade their meters. So you can say the immediate difficult gap is the 6 million. The 4 million is they have meters, but we need to upgrade them, or the discos need to upgrade them rather. So this first plan is everyone that does not have a meter will get metered, right? Now, as we catalyze the industry locally, discos get stronger, the balance of the 4 million, because it's in the best interest of the discos to take a bad meter that can be bypassed and replace it with a good one. But anyone that's metered through the government metering plan will have a meter for free at the point of deployment.
Thank you, Dr. There's just one more question around metering. And this is more a policy thing. Is there a long-term certainty? I'm not sure if certainty is the word, but is there a long-term certainty about government electricity meter policy between local manufacturing / assembling versus importation? I think what this question is saying is, what is government's what's government's intention here? What are you to increase metering? What's your intention?
And there's been a lot of mischief around this thing, right? So, we found out that there were some meters that were stuck at the ports. And very quickly, NERC went to finance, and finance went to the president, and we said, we need to allow for a waiver for the duty on these meters because of our emergency to get them in, because they're already there at the ports. Now, government said, we're going to do this very intelligently. Instead of just saying for 1 year, bring in all the meters you want, we said there's an IDEC group in finance ministry. If you have any meter at the port, go and apply and bring it in, no duty. And we said, even though the president has given a waiver for 3 million meters for 1 year, imported, we're going to do it based on need. If you come and apply, we'll give it to you. Then we also said, though, we don't have jobs, it's COVID, so it's good that we didn't give a blanket waiver. You have to go and apply. And actually, if you look at MOMAS and MOJEC and Smart Metering Solutions and others, they all are metering manufacturers locally. So we said, okay, actually, let's even find out how many meters are in the country now. Either you complete meters or CKD, completely knocked down, semi-knocked down that can be assembled. So we found out that there's about 950,000 meters in the country now, either complete or partially or completely knocked down for assembly. So we said, it means that we may not even need to use this waiver. So when we did the program under CBN, we said, phase 0, we're going to buy everything that is in country, either assembled or everything that is in a form that needs to be assembled by the manufacturers. That was step 1. So I'll tell you now, I am 100% certain we will not use that waiver that the president gave us. We'll only use a small portion of it because the first 900,000 out of the 6 million are already in country now. Now, we now put into the CBN guidelines for the lending, which is public. So again, I saw another news report, I think in The Guardian this week, that, the 35% levy is disrupting the metering plan. I mean, for lack of a better term, it was a bullshit story, right? What we're doing now is to say, under the CBN guidelines, if any press person will read it, you now have a requirement that any meter that is bought from that fund in phase 1 now will do a competitive procurement of only local manufacturers. That will create jobs and it will create a metering industry for us in Nigeria. And that will be anything that's the balance of the 5 million that we buy through the government-sponsored program. We're working with the World Bank to fund some of it, but we're also telling them, if you bring money, we want our local guys to play. We're not importing meter. So mark my words here, and everyone can quote me, we're not importing meters. We're buying meters from Nigerian manufacturers.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have to start rounding up. Thank you so much, panelists. I think this has really been an interesting session, if I may say so myself. And if I had missed this and wasn't moderating, it would have been very painful if I didn't hear about it. But there's been so much information here and a lot of education. I expect that the Nigeria Electricity Hub will put out some of this information to the public domain as they typically do, because I think one of the comments that was made was that there needs to be a lot of education. People really need to understand how this whole thing works. And it's the whole issue around transparency. The more we understand, and I think Mr. Ahmed Zakaria has also said that a lot of us that are online and, put out gist, maybe we should be putting out the correct gist, and, the correct information and not fake news, so that a lot more people are enlightened about how the sector really works and what this transparency is about. What that does is also that it challenges the system. So I'll go around my panelists just to take your closing remarks. I have to ask you to do that in 2 minutes each, please. And then I will close on some of the recommendations we've heard. So Jose, because you haven't spoken in a bit.
Yeah, well,
Let's start with you.
Mr. Ahmad Zagari, who is bringing excellent news to the sector, and I think he deserves to speak and to say those things. To end up, I would say, we always have to keep the mindset of the end consumer in this sector, because at the end we were talking about transparency and cashless payment, but the collection is really related to the mindset of the end consumer. What is his willingness to pay for a service that he's receiving? As I said, we have two main aspects that we have to consider how to increase the collection in Nigeria. One is related, and we had a long discussion about the metering and the fairness of the billing of the bills to that, which that solution is bringing very positive. As far as this, because they also keep an eye open and understand that bypassing is an issue, and it will become an issue going forward. So they will have to really take care of this. And the second thing is that the number of hours of power supply per day. That is going to be critical going forward. That requires more generation, which is big investment. That requires to grow on the transmission and also a big investment on the distribution networks. Those investments, they will need to be bring into or factor into the tariff. And I also think that the idea of the service reflected tariff, dividing those categories depending on the number of hours that you're receiving, is also a good solution. However, the whole revenue requirement of the system at some point will have to be clarified in this transparency. And we really need to bring, like, what is the cost of servicing power in Nigeria? This is the key point for the transparency. We don't know yet how much it costs to deliver power in Nigeria, and this is a challenge. And we will have to go through that process. Only when we know what is the real cost, then we will have service reflected tariff, which I think is still something that we have to work on.
Engineer Lau, your closing remarks, please.
Okay. I would start by saying that we would work with you, Josie, to know how much that would cost, and not just the peri-urban, but across the distribution company. I would like to state that this has been a very worthwhile 2 hours spent, and it's very important for our customers to understand that transparency for us means us having the right amount of service that will be able to serve our customers, charge the right amount of tariff, that we should be able to recover the cost of our business and the return on our investment. And it also improves lives for our customers who are our stakeholders. Kaduna Electric isn't just partnering with other companies to ensure that we supply electricity, but we are actually partnering with third-party companies and agencies and non-profit organizations to ensure that we improve the life of our consumers, which will also help increase the demand for electrification and electricity across the industry. We are very sure that with our metering drive, with our PIP, we'll be able to ensure that there's sustainability in our business. We serve our customers with the right amount of service that is required, and we ensure that we operate profitably and sustainably across the value chain. We are hoping that in some few years to come, we'll be able to make 24-hour supply a reality within our company, and we'll work towards that. We implore our customers to support us and to watch out and to respond to complain as much as they can through the available channels, because that will only make our services better. So thank you very much for having me, Dolapo. Thanks to next year, and do enjoy your night. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Lawal. And Mr. Ahmed Zachary, your closing remarks?
Look, what I would say is that we've been clamoring as a NESI for support to do reforms. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has now given us that approval and support. The whole NESI must come together. Discos need to remit their money and meter their customers. Government needs to, be better at policy consistency, and all the players need to play their part so we don't lose this golden opportunity. I am confident, as I said, before the end of the life of this administration, we'll eliminate the metering gap with the service-based tariff that incentivizes discos to improve service and take power. We will improve and increase the amount of energy that is being consumed by our citizens. And with payment discipline, we're going to improve the liquidity situation. So I'm very excited all I'll ask for is the hub that did this session today. Great. Thank you for having us, and everyone that's involved, please pass the right information. Even when we revert to service-based tariffs, 55% of the population will still be fully subsidized, and we're increasing we're reducing the price for all bands, but we do not have any choice. We must transition to service-based tariff, and we must all support that approach to ensuring the electricity sector continues to improve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zachary. And just rounding up, as I said earlier, it's been a very interesting session. Just a few things to note from what we've heard today. Transparency is much more than just cash collections. It's a good product. It's willingness to pay. It's, metering is a huge part of achieving transparency. And looking at transparency is much more than just looking at transparency along the cash line, although that's really the bottom line of it. But it's also transparency around planning. It's transparency around what is the cost of power, as we've discussed. A lot more other things. We heard very interesting news today about, government's plans to increase liquidity, which it appears that the discos are, well, I won't say happy to do, but are cooperating. It seems from what we've heard, the energy in the room.
Happy to do that. Yeah, happy to.
Yes, so Kaduna Disco has said they'll be happy to. And government is committing to this service, reflective tariff. We've also agreed that investment is really critical to achieving transparency. It is really, really good. There are a lot of things that require investment, and government has shown some commitment to helping with that investment. We've talked about the use of data and planning. So it's been a very, very interesting session. Government has also talked about how it's putting in efficiencies in the system. So I'll say it's been a very interesting session. Thank you all for being a very good audience, a great audience, and for the great questions that have come through. I want to say again, thank you to all the panelists, Engineer Lawal, Mr. Ahmed Zachary, Jose, thank you so much for your insights. It's been really, really good, and you made it a very, very insightful session. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to Okunda.
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, panelists. This was fun, and I appreciate every detail that has gone into this. Oops, Mr. Zachary already dropped off. But anyway, I was going to say, like, really, one thing that has, that stood out to us is the thing about information and, sensitization, education, all of that. And, this issue of fake news or misread or misinterpreted information or whatever, we need to address. And it's something that we at the Nigeria Electricity Hub are really, really trying to put an end to as much as possible. So we're very much interested in collaborating with every stakeholder, the discos, and with the government, really, to see how we can, get these things out, the right information, press releases or whatever. These are things that we want to do as much as possible. And also, this particular topic is like the gambit for the next discussion that we want to have, which is on infrastructure and investment. Jose already mentioned something about this, how, having these meters deployed and all these other things will, in the long run, cost more investment in the industry. So it's just an interesting coincidence. And I like that these things are timed in this order. So thank you again, panelists. It's been a pleasure to have you here. And thank you very much, Labo, for the time management. I really appreciate that. The next dialogue will be announced as usual, and we'll give out communiques and more information on this dialogue subsequently. So once again, thank you all for attending, and have a good evening.